All right, so get ready for this deep dive because we're tackling a thought experiment that's been trending on Reddit. What if we judged candidates like solely on their stances? It'd be like shopping for policies in this, political supermarket.
Yeah.
No party labels, no faces, no names, no backstories, just their policies. Would we make better decisions or would we miss like crucial pieces of the puzzle?
Hmm. That's a really interesting question. It really makes you think about what's important in an election. I mean, we're also used to the political theatrics, right? But stripping all that away, you really have to look at your own values and priorities. It's a different way of looking at things.
For sure, and the original post on Reddit basically asked if we'd make better decisions that way.
Hmm.
But a lot of commenters, they jumped on a major problem. Now, how can you even tell if their stance, the one they're telling you, is like what they genuinely believe?
Hmm.
Especially new candidates. I mean, they don't have a voting history. It's easy to say the right things, but, how do we know they'll actually do them?
Yeah, that skepticism came up a lot. One Redditor even said we should be judging candidates based on their prom king and queen votes. If they even went to prom. Obviously, that's a joke, but it shows you how hard it is to, figure someone out without any background.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe not the best way to judge someone,
Yeah.
but it brings up a more serious question. What about their voting history? Could that be the answer? Like looking at their past decisions?
There were definitely some people on Reddit saying we should look at those records, but it's not as simple as it sounds. Someone brought up the vote on CHP, that's the Children's Health Insurance Program.
Yeah.
It looked like Democrats voted against it, which seems kind of odd, right?
Right, yeah.
But the context there is important.
Yeah, the Redditor explained that Democrats actually voted against it because the bill tied CHIP funding to the funding for Trump's border wall. So they weren't against children's health care. It was a strategic move.
Right, exactly. That's the problem with using voting records as your only way to judge. Legislation's rarely straightforward. There's compromises, deals, amendments. It can make a single vote pretty misleading. One commenter said, passing laws is a clusterfuck, which I think sums it up pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. So if voting records aren't reliable, then what else can we use? Especially in this hypothetical situation where we're only looking at stances.
Okay, well, this is where it gets interesting. One Redditor brought up John Rawls and the veil of ignorance. It's a thought experiment to help people make fair decisions.
Okay, this might sound a bit complicated, but stay with us. It gets relevant to this whole election problem, I promise.
Okay, so the veil of ignorance basically says to imagine designing a society where you don't know your place in it. You don't know your wealth, your social status, race, gender, nothing. The idea is that this forces you to be fair to everyone because, you could end up anywhere.
Right, it's like that classic example. One person cuts a cake, and the other person gets to choose their slice. You're going to cut that cake pretty fairly if you don't know which piece you'll get.
Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly. This Redditor was saying that the veil of ignorance could help us choose candidates that would govern for everybody, not just, for their own specific people or interests.
It makes sense, but it sparks some arguments too. Some people worried that focusing only on stances would make candidates hide who they really are even more. If it's all about checking off the right policy boxes,
Mm.
it could become a game of empty promises and vague statements just to get votes.
Yeah, I see what you mean. If we take away all their personal info, how can we be sure they're actually committed to those stances? Or are they just saying what people want to hear? It raises the question of how much do we need to know about their character and motivations, even in this, anonymous system.
Right, yeah. That's a tough one. That's a little scary, isn't it? Like this idea of candidates just playing policy bingo to get elected makes you wonder if, even if we could have these anonymous elections, would we even want them?
Mm.
I mean, is it important to understand their background and experiences, not just their stances?
Yeah, a few people brought that up on Reddit, and it's where things get, well, even more complicated. We often hear about lived experience in politics. This idea that if a candidate's been through something themselves, they're better at dealing with it in office. Like, think of a veteran running for office. If they're talking about veterans' issues, their experience makes their words, more powerful.
Right, yeah. It's like that saying, you can't understand someone until you walked a mile in their shoes. Right. I think a lot of voters feel closer to candidates who've had similar struggles or come from similar backgrounds.
Exactly. Shared experiences can build trust.
Yeah, for sure.
But of course, there's another side to this too. Oh, right, because if you focus too much on personal background, it can become prejudice, right? I mean, we've seen how race, gender, religion can affect how people see a candidate, even if they're qualified.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true.
Yeah.
This whole thought experiment really shows the biases we all have,
Yeah.
whether we realize it or not. It makes you wonder if we can actually separate someone's ideas from who they are, and if that's even something we should try to do.
That's a hard question, but there was another point in the thread that I thought was interesting. Someone said that instead of focusing on the candidate, we should look at the whole system.
Oh,
They
yeah.
said even if we elect the, quote unquote perfect candidate, they're still stuck in a system that might be flawed.
Right, that's an important point. Elections are just one part of a much bigger thing.
For sure.
We can't ignore the power structures and representation and all of that. It all shapes the political landscape.
Hmm.
So, okay, where does that leave us? If the veil of ignorance isn't perfect and focusing on someone's background is also problematic, is there like a middle ground?
Yeah.
How do we deal with this, this reality where a candidate's identity is always a part of it?
Well, some people on Reddit had some ideas. One was to look at how involved they are in their community. Like, are they actually doing things, volunteering, advocating for causes? Those actions can tell you a lot about them.
Yeah, it's about going beyond the speeches and seeing what they actually do. Right.
Exactly. It's about action.
Okay, cool.
Someone else said we should focus on transparent campaign financing.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Like who's giving the money?
Mhm.
Are there any conflicts of interest there? Knowing where the money's coming from can tell you about their priorities.
Things saying follow the money, right? It
Exactly.
can reveal a lot more than a campaign slogan.
Exactly. It's about connecting the dots.
Right.
And another Redditor, they even suggested a system where experts evaluate the candidates, experts in different policy areas. This could give voters a more objective assessment of their knowledge and qualifications.
Yeah, like going beyond just what they say their stance is.
Exactly.
That's a cool idea. It reminds me of how some countries use independent commissions to draw electoral boundaries, to prevent gerrymandering.
Right. Yeah.
It's about trying to make the process more fair.
Exactly. Trying to be more objective.
Okay, so it seems like this Reddit discussion showed us that judging candidates is, messy.
Yeah, definitely messy.
There's no easy answers.
Right. There's good points on all sides.
Yeah, for sure. It reminds us that we need to think critically
Absolutely.
and to question our own assumptions.
Yes.
And to, talk about these things with respect and nuance.
Couldn't agree more.
So, as we move to the last part of this deep dive, let's think about what all this means for us, as voters.
Yeah.
How do we actually use these ideas in real elections? Where, let's be real, the candidates' identities are always going to be a factor.
That's the big question, and it's what we'll be discussing next.
Yeah, we'll be looking at the psychology of voting and how to make more informed choices, ethical choices.
It should be interesting.
Welcome back to the final part of this deep dive. So we've been thinking about these anonymous elections, but what about real life? In the real world, we see everything about candidates all over the news and social media, every move they make, everything they tweet.
Yeah, even their bad haircuts.
Exactly. It's not just a list of policies anymore. It's this constant flood of information and opinions and misinformation, too.
Right, and our brains trying to make sense of it all, but sometimes they take shortcuts.
Shortcuts? What do you mean?
Well, if there's things called cognitive biases, they're like mental patterns that make us judge things in a way that isn't, totally rational.
Yeah.
They're often based on limited information or emotional reactions, and they can really mess us up when we're trying to, figure out who to vote for.
So what kind of biases should we watch out for?
Well, confirmation bias is a big one. That's where we look for information that agrees with what we already believe, and we ignore anything that contradicts us.
Oh, yeah. I'm totally guilty of that.
Yeah.
Especially online. It's like those algorithms know exactly what I want to see.
Yeah.
And they just keep showing me more of it. No wonder everyone ends up in these political bubbles.
Exactly. Everyone's just hearing what they want to hear.
Yeah.
And then there's the halo effect. That's where our overall impression of someone, whether we think they're good or bad, can affect how we see their policies.
Okay, I see.
So if you like a candidate, you might give them the benefit of the doubt, even if you don't really understand what they stand for.
Yeah. It's like when you meet a really charming salesperson, you might buy something you don't even need just because you like them.
Exactly. And then there's the availability heuristic. That one means we give too much importance to information that's easy to remember.
Okay, so stuff that's really vivid or emotional.
Yeah, like if a candidate messes up or there's a scandal.
Right, it's all over the news.
Those things stick in our minds more than their actual policies.
Yeah. even if those policies are way more important in the long run.
Right,
It's
exactly.
like those clickbait headlines.
Yeah,
They grab your attention, but they don't tell the whole story.
exactly. So knowing about these biases, how can we make better choices when we vote?
Well, the first thing is just to know that they exist,
Yeah.
right? If you're aware of them, you can, try to avoid them. And we can't just sit back and let the information come to us. We have to go find it,
Yeah.
different perspectives and all that.
Yeah, be a critical thinker.
Right.
Ask questions, compare different sources, look for the reasons behind the messages.
Don't just take things at face value.
Exactly.
One Redditor said we should make a pros and cons list for each candidate, but only focus on their policies, not their personality or what they say in their speeches.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
It makes you figure out what's important to you and judge them based on real things.
Yeah, not just your gut feeling.
Someone else said we should look at their history of community involvement or activism.
So how have they actually helped their community?
Exactly. Have they walked the walk, not just talk the talk?
Okay, yeah, I like that.
It's about seeing those patterns of behavior.
Right, connecting the dots.
And one more thing that people mentioned was talking to people who have different political views. Get out of your echo chamber and listen to other perspectives.
Oh, that's so important. It's not about changing someone's mind. It's about trying to understand where they're coming from. We can all learn from each other.
I agree. Civil discourse is so important. It's how we fix things and make things better for everyone.
So, after this whole deep dive, do we have an answer to that original question? Can we make better decisions if we just know their stances and nothing else about them?
Well, I think we've raised more questions than we've answered.
Uh-huh, yeah, probably.
Anonymous elections sound good, but it's way more complicated than it seems.
Yeah, we've seen how our biases can trick us, even when we're trying to be objective.
Mm.
And a candidate's background can tell us a lot about them too, like how they connect with people and their character.
Yeah, taking away all their personal info might seem like a way to be fair, but it could have the opposite effect.
Right, the best speaker might win, not the best person for the job.
Exactly. And like one Redditor said, we elect people, not platforms.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's about balance, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at what they stand for, but also their experiences and what they've done in the past.
This whole deep dive has reminded us that there's no easy way to choose who to vote for.
Yeah, it's a process.
It's about learning, thinking, talking to people.
And being critical thinkers,
Yeah.
right? And questioning ourselves and holding our leaders accountable.
Exactly, for their actions, not just their words.
So when you go to vote, remember everything we've talked about. Look for different perspectives, ask questions, be open to changing your mind.
And participate in the process. Try to make things better for everyone.
This deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
Hmm.
And hopefully it's just the beginning of more conversations like this.
I hope so too.